Hello, this is Father Rich. I'm here in the main front hallway of the Our Lady of Peace Rectory. I'm here in front of a couple things. This tells you the masterpiece. There's several, these are two of I think 3 or 4 of the 3D puzzles that were popular back in the early 2000s when the movie about this masterpiece came out. In fact, several movies. The Lord of the Rings. That great novel by J.R.R. Tolkien, written the novels between 1954 and 1955. Actually in front of the one I still have up of Camelot, because the Arthurian legends and stories were a big influence on Tolkien. That was a big influence, as well as Norse mythology, and then of course the Christian story, the Bible, which Tolkien was a faithful Catholic. So the other thing I have here, Brian Kuzman, our own director of music and liturgy, is a big Lord of the Rings fan. So this is his image of Galadriel, who was the elven queen that was in there, which some people read as kind of a Marian image from Tolkien. So this is his great story. The unique thing about Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is that not only did he tell this, kind of great fantasy story, but he also created a whole world around it that isn't all just represented in the books. He wrote other books. One was called the Silmarillion, that tells some of the background or that predates how Middle Earth came to be where it was when Bilbo Baggins and Frodo Baggins are part of the story. Bilbo is represented in The Hobbit, which is the prequel to The Lord of the Rings, and then Frodo is the main player in the Lord of the Rings, and it's a 3-part series. The Lord of the Rings is all the story told in 3 parts: the Fellowship of the Ring, the 2 Towers, and then the Return of the King. Okay, so written in the 50s, the movies came out in the 2000s, which had a big renewal of interest in this story. But yes, he developed this whole language for his world, the Middle Earth. He drew maps. He had different creatures in it, and it really took it to a whole nother level. His son, even after he died, published some of the writings he had that developed kind of the story of Middle Earth even more. So Tolkien, though, in writing this story, he clearly said he did not try to write an allegory. Some said after being right after the war that he was writing an allegory about the Cold War and nuclear weapons. Some, assumed he was making a Christian allegory, which there are some strong Christian images in there. Galadriel, as I mentioned, kind of some saw as a Marian figure. I use the lembus in Lord of the Rings when I'm giving sometimes Eucharistic talks about what an image of the Eucharist it is. It's kind of this mysterious elven magical bread that gives the Frodo and the fellowship this kind of willpower to keep moving on and sacrifice in the midst of very overwhelming odds and evil. So a lot of Christian, but he clearly said he was not trying to write an allegory. He was just trying to tell a good story. But they do say it's a parable about the misuse of power, the ring, of course, that could be used to, it could start not only used for your advantage and power, but it could start to influence your personality in a negative way. So certainly a statement about the misuse of power and the battle of good versus evil. So that's certainly a big part of it. They mentioned that, so the difference between Tolkien's kind of view in The Lord of the Rings and some of the other influences, they say that the Norse mythology that was influential on him, the thing about it was that it had, and I'm of course missing the page where that was. So they mentioned that, in the Norse worldview, they kind of would see this impersonal fate. And of course, that wasn't his perspective, that his prime worldview is Christian. And so a world where God's providence assures the eventual victory of good over evil, though not without much struggle and sacrifice. So what would make it unique to some of those other worldviews, and even certainly the Arthur worldview is more Christian. So Tolkien actually was born in South Africa to English parents. His mom brought him back to England. His dad was supposed to follow up, but unfortunately died. And then at the age of 12, his mom passed away. But when he was about 8, she converted to Catholicism. And then a priest had a huge influence on helping raise Tolkien and really develop Father Francis Morgan. And so he would have a huge influence on Tolkien. We found out when we went to England, when we went to the oratory in Birmingham that St. John Henry Newman started, that Tolkien actually lived at the oratory for a while with his brother. And that the oratory actually had an influence on some of the, on Tolkien's kind of view of the Shire, particularly. So he would become, grow up, and through the study that he would get in the tutoring through Father Morgan, he would eventually go to Oxford, where he would show quite a academic skill, and so would eventually befriend C.S. Lewis and others. They were part of that Inklings group that would go to the bar and talk about the Christian faith and their studies together. And so eventually made his way through that, and then eventually, I believe, committed to, he worked at Oxford then. So one of the letters that Tolkien explains his mythology, excuse me, I'm going to jump back, get another quote from Tolkien. They mention that he says, I would claim to have as one object the elucidation of the truth and the encouragement of good morals in the real world by the ancient device of exemplifying them in unfamiliar embodiments that tend to bring them home. So they kind of say, the writer, of course, Terry Glaspey, says that one of the strengths of Tolkien's writing is that he can awaken the sense of the spiritual longing without tipping his hand in regard to his personal convictions. So Catholic or Christian. Perhaps that is why so many readers who do not share Tolkien's faith can still count The Lord of the Rings among their favorite books. It does not threaten, it enchants. I love that. Creating a longing for a better world. It woos us with a story well told and a vision of beauty and true goodness. Instead of relying on allegorical symbols, he chose to create a world constructed around the values of honor, strength, courage, and the existence of a benevolent creator. Tolkien himself described The Lord of the Rings series as a fundamentally religious work, even though he doesn't mention God at all in the whole series. That is why he wrote, I have not put in anything like religion in the imaginary world, for religion is absorbed in the story and the symbolism. So, a great story. Tolkien, it's said that he tried to push Lewis to become Catholic, and Lewis never did that, but he certainly appreciated his Catholic identity, even, again, being in England where that Catholicism was not supported in the 1900s, and still struggles a bit to this day. So a great masterpiece. Encourage you to read it if you haven't, and we appreciate it. And I certainly know one that influenced me in my growing up and then my adult years. So the next masterpiece, A Love Supreme, this recording by John Coltrane. So I hope you can join us for that. Thank you for being a part of this recording. Have a great day and God bless.